Good afternoon, everyone. Today is August 22nd, and the time is 1 p.m. Has the lobby been cleared? Thank you. Lobby's been cleared. We're here today for a school board briefing meeting today. Welcome. Before we start, does the superintendent have any changes or comments on the agenda?
No changes or comments, sir.
Okay. Right now, we have 3 items for discussion today. Per board protocol, each member should strive for 4 minutes for initial comment, 2 minutes for follow-up, for a total of 10 minutes. Right now, let's proceed to item B1, which is construction change order, and that will be with Mr. Rickenbacker. Welcome, sir.
Good afternoon, board members. Dr. Bernier, this is your June 2023 and July 2023 change order report as required by statute. As the page up on the screen, you'll see we engaged in $5,794,392.74 in direct material purchases. And the amount of tax savings returned to the district on those purchases is $329,570.53. We also had in the second reporting non-direct material purchases of $362,030.15, and we had contingency adjustments in the amount of $207,449.05. The supplemental second sheet is a breakdown of all 3 of those categories. Do you have any questions on the June report?
Board members, comments, questions? None.
Okay, thank you. Let me flip to July. Next up is the July 2023 change order report. We have 3 reportings: direct material purchases in the amount of $2,053,339.43, with a return of tax savings to the district of $117,962.54. We had report number 2, non-direct material purchases, change order amount of $36,333.10, and contingency adjustments in the amount of $134,036.86. And the associated backup sheets are behind. Any questions?
Board, comments, questions? Sir Superintendent, anything?
Nothing from me, sir. Thank you.
Okay, nothing then, sir.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too, sir. Thank you. Next up on the agenda is item B2, which are job descriptions.
Good afternoon, board members. Mr. Chair, just as a reminder to all, I'd like to introduce Hillary McLean. Hillary is come on board just a few months ago as our temporary CHRO, our Chief Human Resource Officer, providing the leadership necessary to begin the process of working with our human relations, our human relations department, our HR department, and shifting its focus to continue to be even more customer friendly than they were. Hillary's work has been instrumental in some of our gains in the number of employees that we found during the summer, some of our finding of bus drivers, and some of the unique solutions she's finding to some of our staffing issues. Today her role specifically surrounds the job descriptions that were provided to you in advance. We'll turn it over to Hillary at this time.
Red light. Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, board, and thank you, Superintendent, for having me here today. There's 4 job descriptions that you received copies of. 3 of them are revisions, and there's 1 job description that is new, and I'm here to answer any questions that you might have.
Mr. Superintendent, anything to add before we go ahead for comments and questions?
No, sir, I'd be interested in the board's questions.
Board, do we have any comments, questions, concerns in regards to the job descriptions? Ms. Morgan?
Thank you. Yes. Coordinator Community Learning Centers Program.
That's the new job description.
That's the new, oh, are we talking about just the revised, or are we talking about?
No, that's a new one that's being presented today. Yep.
Okay. It says under major function, coordinate and implement programs designed to increase student performance in core academic areas. There's no reference made to this is essentially a before and after school program management, right? That's,
Yes. You can infer that, it looks like, from the qualifications that are listed here.
yeah. I just thought if that's the major function, it ought to be mentioned.
Well, yes, I hear you. I'll ask the business owner about adding that into there.
Okay. And then I had a couple of questions about the HR, chief HR. Under minimum qualifications, it seems to me that one of the things we need is someone who's experienced with business process management, tools like PeopleSoft, that degrees are not enough, but experience with something like PeopleSoft ought to be, at a minimum, a qualification, not that it needs to be PeopleSoft.
So there is a line in there that speaks to the HRIS technical side. The reason why it's not listed at the chief level is there is a HRIS coordinator within the Human Resources Department, that's their sole job responsibility. So the chief people officer needs to understand HR practice and process and needs to know about it from an experience perspective, which is why the 15 years is listed there. And when they know enough about process, and they know that the system is either doing it or not doing it, but we have people on the HR team that are proficient in PeopleSoft specifically, and if you're working at another company, you'd have maybe people that are proficient in Workday, or people that are proficient in Bamboo HR, whatever HRIS system you're using, but the chief people officer does not need to be certified in that, and we won't probably find someone at that level that is.
I'm not saying certified, I'm just saying experience with.
Well, if they're all, everybody who has 15 years of experience is going to have experience with some sort of HRIS platform. And there is a piece, let me find it in the job description, where we mention the technical piece of it. Hold on. Partner with technology to source innovative solutions and make the workplace more efficient. That's one technology requirement that they need to have. And I also think when you look at deliver the functions, the talent acquisition, training, compensation, benefits, labor, all of that is all done in the system now. It's not done on paper. So you wouldn't be able to do those functions if you weren't knowledgeable in the system.
Yeah, well, that's what we've had. So that's why I make the comment. Under other job functions, another comment, there's nowhere in here that I saw that we make reference to, you must continue to engage in professional development through participation in whatever national and state societies are involved in HR. I mean, I just think.
Yeah, it does say here, ability to consistently transform the HR function to stay competitive and innovative for years to come. If they don't do that, I could add it to the job description, but it isn't really, it's part of that person's if you're not staying current, you're not going to be able to be successful in the job description as a whole.
Yes, but then again, when we're evaluating, when these people are being evaluated, these are things that we're holding them accountable for. So if they're failing in the job because they're not doing it, then that's a problem for us.
McLean, and Ms. Morgan, I do agree. I think in an educational institution such as ours, I think it's always of value potentially to name the fact that ongoing professional development is a requirement of this position. It also puts the new CHRO in a position where he or she could have the expectation from the superintendent to ensure that they have that ability to then attend those national conferences or attend that
Of course.
consistent, sometimes referred to as career education units or CEUs.
Yeah.
That would give them the opportunity to continue to stay, for instance, SHRM certified. So we can go and make the adjustment to the job description.
Yep, and that's it. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ms. Patrica? Ms. Patrica,
Thank
followed
you.
by Ms. Jordan.
Thank you. I just have some Scrivener's errors. Should I send those to you, Dr. Bernier?
Please.
On the CHRO job description. Thank you.
Ms. Jordan?
Thank you and welcome. Just a question, a follow-up with Ms. Morgan. So the coordinator, is that, and they, let's see, I'm so sorry, I just had it in my head. You said business owner. What did that mean when you
So
said
the
that?
person who is working, who this person would report to, HR partners with the business to write job descriptions. We don't write them in a silo on our own. So we work with operational leaders. So this position reports to the supervisor. So we would go back and have the discussion about adding a bullet on the before and after school activities.
So if you think, Ms. Jordan, to help, and these are terms that I'm used to using that we've not used a lot in our organization, but you'll see them more and more, and you heard some of them in the strategic plan presentation. There's always an executive sponsor in my mind for anything we do. That gives the superintendent one person to hold accountable for particular work or particular outcomes. But they will work with what's referred to as a business process owner, someone down the organizational ladder from them. And eventually, most work winds up in something what we call a SME, a subject matter expert. So when we look at particular things like technology, it could start with the executive sponsor being Dwayne Alton, but then it would work down into his next level. That would be the person that Dwayne held accountable for the outcome. And then depending on whether we were working on web services or security, there would be a subject matter expert assigned to that project and process so that it reaches the correct conclusion. That just provides me a very clean chain. I was just working with RSM, for instance. When RSM targets particular areas to be audited, I want to be sure we have an opportunity to name the executive sponsor of that work. So if IT is being audited, or finance is being audited, or construction is being audited, then I know which chief to put in charge, and they'll work with business process owners and then subject matter experts to ensure we comply with the audit and then make the changes. So it's just terminology that will slowly but surely add to our lexicon, because education needs a few more acronyms.
Well, it just confused me because it said reports to principals.
Yep.
And then when you said
Business owner.
I'm like, business owners have principals now? So
It's just
That's where I
another
was
term of
confused.
ownership for the job description, because if HR just wrote a job description and put it out and didn't get feedback from whoever is going to manage them, we're likely not to have the right skill set in the job description.
And would this person be, is it one individual or is it one per school?
In this situation, this position would be for whichever school wanted to use this job. So we would go to academic services likely and have the conversation with the person who's over the principals that have this job in their school and say, give us some more language around the before and after school activities that this person's responsible for.
Okay,
So we can add it in there appropriately.
thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else before I ask a question? Okay. First off, welcome, Ms. McLean. Good to see you up there. This is a question, this might be also for Dr. Bernier at the same time. Chief Human Resources Officer is an extremely important position in this district, and there's a lot that's changed with this job description. I like the new language, but question, Do you feel that there's been a core philosophical change of the position? And if so, what do you think those core changes are as you see it?
I can take a stab at what I think, but Dr. Bernier's probably,
I'm going to take the
Better.
first stab if that's okay. I think thank you, Mr. Fisher, for the question, because it really begins with what Hillary said when she said a chief people officer. She's not using chief human resource officer. She's talking about a chief people officer. And when you talk about human resources, you are talking about people. And therefore, people are our customer. Our principals are our customers. Their secretaries who interact the most with HR are our customers. It really shifts the focus in this job description to being a people-oriented business, finding talent, keeping talent, retaining it, but then also really raising the bar for this individual will be vital for Speak Up, Listen Up culture and helping to support that, but also the aspect of really driving a customer experience that is positive, both for an incoming individual seeking employment, but also those individuals within our system that utilize human resources to interact, find, locate, hire, and retain employees. I know Hillary's going to have more to add to that. Ms. McLean?
yeah, it is a shift in culture. Just in my few short weeks that I've been supporting in this role, HR is very compliance-oriented, right? Which they should be, right? None of us look very good in orange, so it's good that they're compliant-oriented. We want them to be, right? But we're missing that customer service and where we really focus on people. And so one of the things that I'm working on is putting together structure so that we can focus on the people and make sure that the people that work in this district feel valued and supported. And that starts, with Dr. Bernier and funnels all the way through the organization. And HR has a huge lift when it comes to our practices and processes to ensure that people feel supported and valued. So, yes, it's a big shift.
Thank you, Ms. McLean. I appreciate that. Any other comments and questions in regards to job descriptions, board? Go ahead, Ms. Patrica.
Now's the time. Why don't we just call it the chief people person? I mean, it's chief people officer, but if that's really where we're headed, our comrades at Lee Health do the same.
I think that's an area that we can start referring to the position as, I think, for clarity and advertisement and making sure that we have the right people. I still believe there could be an industry standard out there that people will be looking for a chief of human resources position. But once we on board and have that person on board, it's just like I used to, and I talk to sometimes when I go to schools and meet the front lady at the counter who does all the reception. They're not a receptionist. They're not an information specialist. They may be. That may be their title. And I don't think this job description will ever come before you, but they really are the chief executive officer in charge of first impressions. When you walk into a school building, that first person you meet, it gives you the entire feel for the campus. And we can't discount that amount of work and how important that person is. And that's, again, some of the philosophical change that Mr. Fisher was asking about. We have to value our positions no matter where they are within the organizational structure. So I appreciate Ms. McLean's effort to help redesign a very drafted job description. This will clean up, get reformatted again before we bring it back to you an additional time.
Yep.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you, Ms. McLean. I appreciate it, and look forward to seeing what else is going to happen within HR, so thanks.
Thanks for the feedback.
Thanks. Have a great day. Next up is item B3, 2023-2024 assessment calendar, and I believe that will be Director Marks.
So while Joy takes her seat and finds her correct PowerPoint presentations, of which there'll be two, to speak about testing schedule, what Ms. Marks will be covering for us today are the required testing schedules for our district. They allow the calendar to then be populated so that school buildings, principals, and our other educational institutions and parents understand where our testing schedule is, when it will be conducted, and allow us to begin the forward planning to be ready for each one of those testing windows. I'll turn it over to Ms. Marks.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Board, Dr. Bernier, and Mr. Huffman. Today's presentation will be to present our draft uniform assessment calendar for the 23-24 school year. The timeline presented shows important dates relative to preparing and presenting, obtaining approval for this 23-24 uniform assessment calendar. We received our most recent template from the Department of Education on August 7th. Prior to receiving the template, our assessment coordinators worked in conjunction with our curriculum coordinators and directors to compile and prepare for the district assessment portion. On August 18th, the assessment calendar was presented to the Deputy Superintendent and Chief Academic Officer for review. August 21st, the assessment calendar was presented to Superintendent's Cabinet for approval to proceed. Today, I will present the draft assessment calendar to you for briefing and discussion. It has been put on the September 19th board action meeting agenda for approval. If approved, the calendar will be posted to the district website and provided to the Department of Education by October 1st. The item is intended to satisfy compliance with the Florida Statute 1008.22 Student Assessment Program for public schools. Specifically, each school district shall establish schedules for the administration of statewide standardized assessments and district required assessments and approve the schedules as an agenda item at a district school board meeting. Each school district shall publish the testing schedules on its website using the uniform calendar and submit the schedules to the Department of Education by October 1st each year. The assessment calendar is provided to districts in the form of a template from the Department of Education. Sections 1 through 4 are pre-populated with information regarding the state assessments. Pre-populated material includes the glossary of terms, test type, and the purpose and use of the tests. In sections 3 and 4, tests are broken down into assessments for all students and assessments for select group of students. Examples of assessments for all students would be the Florida Assessment of Student Thinking Progress Monitoring in Reading and Math for grades K through 10, whereas an example of an assessment for a select group of students would be retake opportunities for students in grades 11 and 12 on the Florida Assessment of Student Thinking for Reading. Section 5 is filled with district assessments that are required for all schools in the district. Examples of the district required assessments are benchmark readiness tests, quarterly comprehensives, and exemplars. The last section of the template allows districts to compile a table that I'll present on the next slide, which compiles our estimated total times for testing by grade level. So slide 4 orients us to the estimates of average time for administering state required assessments and district assessments. State assessment times are provided to us in the template, and the district assessment times are provided to us through the curriculum department in those meetings that were held prior to populating the template. I've also provided to you to see the change in minutes from the 22-23 school year calendar to the 23-24. Some notable changes that you will see impacting total minutes this year are grades 4 through 10. There is an addition of the state writing assessment. Grades 5 and 8 saw a reduction in state science. Grade 5 science will now test in 1 day instead of over 2, and grade 8 had its minutes reduced by 40 minutes. Grade 2, all students will be given a gifted screener. Grades 9 and 10, you'll see some big shifts in those, and that is because state biology EOC minutes are now being calculated into the grade 9 total instead of grade 10, because the majority of our students taking biology are seated in grade 9. That is part of their progression. So our next steps from here, and reviewing it, is September 19th, it will be on the agenda for school board approval. Items include a provision of superintendent, for the superintendent to make adjustments during the year as necessary. If approved, we will post for public view on the school district website and provide and submit to the Florida Department of Education by October 1st. Superintendent's comments, board discussion.
Nothing from the superintendent.
Board members, questions, comments, concerns? Ms. Jordan?
Thank you. This may be a crazy question. The minutes that are given for the testing, how is that determined? Because the ones that have taken minutes away from a child to test, is it because the test is now smaller?
No, that would be, in many cases, examples would be we're giving fewer exemplars in a lot of our grade levels, so that would be a reduction in minutes, a reduction in testing from the year before.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Persons?
So the first round of assessment tests pretty much start in September?
We actually, our district
now?
window opened yesterday.
Yesterday, okay.
Yes.
I had a hard time trying to figure out the timeline, and 'cause I thought it was like right now. Thank you.
The state gives us a window for testing, and then we, as far as state testing goes, we give a district window, and then schools can complete makeup testing as needed after that district window. But they really have the full state window to complete any of the state testing.
Anybody else? Okay. I don't have any questions. All I have to say is thank you, Director Marks, for your hard work. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I
a great day.
appreciate your time today.
Thank you. Next up is public comment. Attorney Huffman, please. Whoop.
Which is good. I just wanted to make sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At this time, there is no request for public comment.
Okay, seeing none out there, we're going to move on to then go to the order and board comment. Start with Ms. Juvenelli.
I have none, thank you.
Ms. Patrica.
I have none, thank you.
Ms. Jordan.
I have some, thank you. Well, I would also ask if we could really, when we're looking at this meeting, because right now we're at 27 minutes, and then we have to be back here at 6 o'clock. And I know we used to really monitor that, where we know we have to be here the entire day, and we don't have that gap, because for a lot of you, that you have to come, quite some distance to be here, and now you're here for like 3 or 4 hours in between for your next meeting. Maybe perhaps we can look at that and adjust it when we have what's on the agenda, based on the agenda. And then 2, I watched the Wink news regarding the buses, and I know we get the updates on how we're doing so much better with the buses getting our children, getting all the kids home. Can we just get an update on how we're doing in the morning?
Be happy to get that information for you. The superintendent is expressed to transportation the beginning next week. I expect to get on-time percentages for the week on a weekly basis, both on time at school and on time on the way home.
Thank you, and I know that...
Enough time to work throughout some of our kinks and some of our systems. We are still subject to weather, but it's time to start tracking the metric because it's part of what's in the metric for the strategic plan.
Thank you. And I know that, the goal is to make sure that all of our kids are in their seats at the appropriate time. I just wanted to see if you had something to share with that, but so thank you for that. And that's it. Thank you.
Board, do you mind if I just jump in on one of Ms. Jordan's comments as a follow-up, if that's all right? In regards to the meeting times and in regards to this, it is something I've did start to bring up with Dr. Bernier in regards to that, making sure we're most efficient with our time as a board. Not saying that, we want to do less. We want to make sure we're using our time and staff's time to the best. I know that other districts I've talked to have less meetings than we do, so I don't know if that's something we perhaps want to discuss in the future. So I don't know if I want to leave that open for Ms. Juvenile.
Now that you're on that subject. So there was a conversation maybe about a year and a half ago of having one meeting a month. And I think maybe that's this conversation. And I don't know if the superintendent's ready for that. I think that was one of the reasons, I think that was a conversation that we had. You had mentioned that, you needed time to get our meetings, our agenda meetings the week prior on track, and so I don't know if that's a conversation anybody wants to have, but I'm willing to have that at this point. Thank you.
Follow up, Ms. Patrica?
So workshops like last week were phenomenal. We actually sat down, we did a lot of work, we dug in deep, we gave a lot of good feedback, and then we sit here today and, we don't really do anything. So I would agree that some more efficiency and making sure that when we're meeting, we do like we did last week, Wednesday. I know you've got to bring some stuff to us, but I don't know why the calendar couldn't have been workshopped, right? Is there a reason why we couldn't have had that information presented to us last week so that we could deal with it all at once and then not? I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there as an option. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Ms. Langford Fleming?
I've also had this conversation in one-on-ones, and I agree that I think we do need to look at the calendar. In speaking with other districts, I know that districts are all different sizes, but I have found that we have an abundant amount of meetings compared to other districts. I'm in favor of definitely making sure that we're using not just our time wisely, but all of the time of the staff and the superintendent. I've never been one to have a meeting just for the sake of, because we're supposed to have meetings. And so if it's just a checking of the box per se, I think all of the staff's time, the superintendent's time can be utilized more efficiently, and maybe less distractions of being where you're needed more and maybe where staff is needed more. I agree with you about the workshop. That was a great workshop. They're all great, but some are a little more rich than others. And maybe perhaps if we know that we have a light agenda for an evening board meeting, maybe the briefing comes 45 minutes before the meeting where people, I don't know if that would be something we could discuss, but if the briefing was say at 4:30, and then, because keeping in mind that so many of our colleagues on the board do drive significantly far, and then you're here for, like you said, 3 hours. So I would be willing to definitely have that conversation either today or later on.
Ms. Jordan?
Thank you, and I just brought that up. It doesn't matter to me. I'm like 2 seconds away, and I could be here at a moment's notice. But I know that we used to do that. We used to look at the agenda, whatever was on the agenda. If it only took us maybe 30 minutes or an hour, we could pretty much tell. But again, that was working together because we don't decide that. That comes from the superintendent's office. So if he has a lot to share with us, then I understand that. But we can certainly move it back further so that we are here and then we can take a break and run right back into the meeting, and everyone out there is not sitting here for hours and they can not be disturbed by us or by the system.
Mr. Persons?
In theory, that all sounds great. I know there are things that come up, and with the superintendent, we can call a special meeting if we went to one a month or something like that. I know like the appointment of all the assistant principals and everything was delayed, and that was a little bit of a problem, but a little more foresight, maybe we could not have to worry about that. But I'd rather have fewer, but maybe longer meetings, condense more. I wouldn't be against having a workshop go extra hours and not have one the next week. That type thing. So definitely, I think everybody's saying we need to look at this and try to get it a little bit better. But we have to be flexible, because there's going to be things come up. We went through a lot of workshops with the policies that we had to go through, but that's over now. So things should calm down quite a bit. So that's all I had to say.
Ms. Morgan?
So I guess I should weigh in too. So first of all, I'm not sure we're ready for one meeting a month. I think that's one board action meeting a month. I just don't think we're there. I have been thinking about the fact that we've been having a lot of difficulty with calendars because we're trying to throw stuff in at times where people have already planned things. So I like the idea of keeping the briefing time where it is, but a week before deciding that we don't have enough on the briefing calendar to fill the 3 hours that are allotted, we basically sent out alerts saying we're going to start at 4, finish at 5, but we've already blocked off the time in case there's something that needs to be discussed. Well, anyway, that's where I am. Thank you.
Ms. Giovanelli, then Ms. Jordan.
Is there a notice issue with that, though? If you have it noticed for 1 o'clock and then you decide to put it to 4, is there a notice? I mean, you change it, like, what's the, I don't know, the
Policy, right?
Yeah, the legal, I think we have to notice by a certain time.
We will have to look into what the legal notifications are. Without getting into the details, there were 2 additional presentations originally scheduled today for 60 minutes apiece. Those items were pulled, and therefore by another division, of which is your employee. I think it has to do with an illness of the lead attorney. And I do believe that I may be mistaken, so I don't want to say definitively, but I believe we may have posted this meeting prior to that pull. So the concern becomes, and I'll have to confer with legal counsel, the concern becomes at what point, once a meeting time is date certain and posted, but we can find out what the rules are and certainly come back and work within that. So I don't know if that answers your question, Ms. Giovanelli, but.
Yeah, I don't either. I mean, that's the question, I guess.
Yeah, we'll have to do the research to make sure that if we were to change a 1 o'clock meeting to a 4 o'clock meeting, that all the public would be appropriately notified, and we'd still be within. Sorry, we'd still be within the legal statutes.
Right.
Ms. Jordan?
I was just bringing it up because, and what Ms. Morgan, I agree with what she had said, but that's what we used to do. If we knew that it became light, we gave notice that it would start at a later time, and then we would all come. So it's just trying to save their time is very valuable. The people who come here are everybody's. Thank you.
As I said, and I've been thinking about this for a while as well, so I appreciate you bringing up that, Ms. Jordan. I think one of the things I'm really proud of this board is I think we're operating really efficient. Sorry, excuse me. I'm trying to pull a Bushism, I guess, so now. But no, and I think that's part of as I said, I really am proud of my teammates here. I think we're getting a lot of work done, and we're doing it efficient, as well as in conjunction with the superintendent, his team. I think that's part of it. But as I said, I do believe we can cut down somewhere, and cut down meaning at least the public meeting part. That doesn't mean we're going to work any less or do anything less or communicate. We all communicate obviously with the superintendent and staff constantly. But I want to make sure we're making use of our best time. I don't know, maybe perhaps if this is a discussion, maybe further, and I'll leave this up as well for the superintendent to chime on this, but maybe either one-on-ones we can discuss this, and maybe potentially a workshop item later on. I don't know what your pleasure would be for that.
Thank you for providing the opportunity, Mr. Chairman. It's interesting. It's just interesting how serendipity the world can be. It was at a direct report just this week where, as you know, the chiefs meet regularly, and the chiefs have brought up the aspect of in November, when the board organizational structure might change, could we also look at that time at specifically look at meetings, and could I begin to have the conversation with the board? I assured them that the conversation had already started, but that we could work more earnestly I do think I agree with some of the board members that 2 action meetings a month really are where we are right now, especially when it comes to appointments. We had assistant principals that were selected in early July. We had to wait for the 31st, and because of the calendar issue, was uncomfortable with the chair to schedule a special meeting because I knew so many people were out of town and potentially unavailable. But that idea of those assistant principals being able to start 2 to 3 weeks earlier would have been really advantageous to their building level principals. So this has come up from the chiefs to the superintendent asking me to have a conversation with all of you. It's on the list for the one-on-ones for next week. And we can share and banter back and forth, but then I will work. Dr. Savage and I already had the conversation. We had part of it in cabinet on Monday. He's raising it with chiefs on this coming Thursday. And then I'll have some feedback to you, and we'll begin a process for looking at what we can do to maximize our time. I do think it's important to have them, but I think all of our time is valuable. The public's time is valuable, and we need to make sure that we're valuing the one resource we can't increase. There are only so many hours in a day, and the ability to have that time to do the work of this board and then do the other things that people need to do is incredibly important for all of you, and I would support any direction change that as a group you might like to see.
So would we further want to go ahead forward with at least trying to figure out how we can make things more efficient and perhaps, change the amount of meetings? Ms. Jordan?
Again, this is the superintendent's agenda, so I think based on him just making a statement of us having the one-on-one, I would prefer to, we just do that, and let's see how that works first.
Any
my
other
preference.
thoughts? Mr. Persons?
Well, first, I'd like to say that one of the reasons these meetings are going so quickly is because the board is doing their research so we don't have as many questions. We do our one-on-ones with the superintendent, our one-on-one with the attorney, going through all the documentation. So that's good, so I can see where the meetings are shorter than they have been in the past. Being out in the audience, there were times that I thought the board was poorly prepared. They were just asking question after question after question. I'm like, why don't they know the answers to that already? But this board is doing very well, so I commend you all for that. Yeah, I think to go one-on-one and just look with the superintendent, I'm sure we can start to see where we can cut or whatever. And I know for the public, it's posted 7 days in advance, so I would think changing any time in that time period would probably not be correct for the public. I did want to mention that because we were talking about it, but again, we'll let legal, come in on that.
I think we can certainly work with our legal department if we have the ability, like for today's meeting, to know that we had some items canceled that would have equaled potentially 2 additional hours. I also really believe that the CHRO discussion would have gone a little bit longer as well, but we've had multiple discussions one-on-one about that particular position and where it's headed. So what I need to know is at what point can I make that change with informing all of you first to make sure that works with your schedules, and then going ahead and making sure that we're within the legal parameters that we have to follow.
Yes, and thank you, Dr. Bernier. I did want to say that 120.525 of Florida statutes dictates what notice requirements are for public meetings, and it requires that it be posted at least 7 days in advance. So changing the time prior to that would potentially be difficult. Of course, the legal department will stand ready to discuss whatever options the board or the superintendent's office come up with to deal with situations like these and how best we can stay within those legal requirements.
Thank you, Mr. Huffman. So at this point, let's have discussion individually in our one-on-ones, I think is the best way at the moment. And then if need be, we can do something after that if the board and the superintendent are good with that. Okay. Ms. Patrica?
Yeah, I guess the only legal question I would have would be whether, if I may, through the chair, and I don't want an answer right now, but whether notice can be given for a variable start time. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, moving on. Thank you for indulging me. Go on, Mr. Persons.
I have no other.
I have
Ms.
none,
Langford
thank you.
Fleming?
I have none, thank you.
Well, then I'll weigh in. First of all, I want to say, and Chairpersons was with me, and actually the superintendent wasn't there. The foundation, Steve Shimp, presented the ISOC PowerPoint, I guess it's called card deck now, and did an outstanding job. And I was suggesting afterwards that it would be great if he filmed his presentation. We put it on the website with all of the other ISOC material. He does a great job. And I want to say thank you to Susan Millay for working with him, and also thank you to the communications department. I'm sorry they're not here. They did an outstanding job, I think, just visually creating what it was that he wanted to say. So that was great, and I hope we can do that. Another thing I want to bring up, I've spoken to the superintendent about it a couple times, but just in a very general way. We get the Strategic Recovery Meeting Executive Summary, and it's very dense, and it's very hard to read, and I don't even know if the public can see it. I think it would be helpful if, as we approach the one-year anniversary of Ian, if we could, for the public, and maybe for some of us, just say generally, where are we with the accounting? Where are we with FEMA? Where are we with insurance companies? You know, just something, because I think we do need to acknowledge the amount of money that we spent as a result of that, and be talking about what we're doing to recover it. So that's one thing. And then the final comment I want to make is, I see Gray Robinson's calendar is July and August, internally vet priorities. When are we going to be talking about our legislative priorities? I have two, but they're not well formulated, but I would like to have the opportunity at some point to discuss them. So I would like to hear what other board members think. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Okay. Did you, Mr. Okay. Nothing at this point. Okay. Ms. Jordan?
I think that Dr. B had given us an outline on that. If he could share that, would
Provided the outline from Gray Robinson.
Yeah.
Gray Robinson is for the public to recognize who they are. That is your lobbyist that you hire to help us do some of the work in Tallahassee. I had a conversation with all of you in our last one-on-one that the chairman and I were going to make some determination based upon this legislative schedule being earlier, when we thought the best time, in conjunction with our lobbyist, when the best time to arrive in Tallahassee would be. Last year we went earlier than we normally went, but it gave us opportunity to get in before some of the committee meetings, talk with staff again, the House staff, Senate staff, and the governor's budgetary staff. So I would imagine that our lobbyist's approach would be similar. And that means in September we would need to start engaging in one of our workshops, having some discussions about a plan with the hopes of having it done by the end of September. I don't see another, I mean, August is disappearing rapidly, so it would have to be done in September in order to have our platform ready.
So that would be a workshop.
Ms. Morgan?
Well, the schedule they put forward says that by September 1st, we will have established our legislative priorities. So when you say September, I hope we're not thinking the end of September. I hope we're thinking the first week in September. We really, anyway, that's, unless we are not going to, we're going to get off to a late start with respect to their recommendation. Thank you.
Mr. Vice Chair and Mr. Chair, members of the board, you do have an upcoming school board workshop coming up on August 30th. That would be the earliest next date you have for a meeting where that could be discussed. We could bring a good cause item to the 30th if that was the desire of the board.
Mr. Persons?
Yeah, I think that would be a good time. Still gives us a little bit of time to think about what we would like to present and get it done as earlier. Earlier is better.
Yeah.
Simple as that. So Yes, I was thinking the next one in September, but with the time frame, you're right. The end of the month would be best. So if we could add that, please.
Rest of the board, are they on board with that? Is that,
Or we could just add an extra meeting.
We're all for that.
I'm for it.
thank you, Ms. Patrica. Everyone good with that? Do you have direction on that?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I would reiterate to the board without, and just object if you don't like what I'm saying, that would give us the opportunity to workshop on the 30th. We could bring back any drafts from that workshop to the briefing on the 6th, and then we could even potentially approve the evening of the 6th.
Okay, we're good with that? Okay. Anything else, Ms. Morgan?
No, that's it. Thank you
Okay.
very much.
Thank you. Okay. I kind of mentioned this last meeting, but one of the big things, and I know it was in our strategic plan, one of the markers that we talked about was, and actually Ms. Langford Fleming had brought this up last time, parents as partners. I went out to all my district schools during the first couple days, really saw some great things, really appreciate the feedback, could see how some of the different schools operated. You know, it was my first time obviously seeing the first day of school as a board member, so it was really fascinating. One of the things I noticed, and it's kind of school dependent, and I kind of wanted to have just kind of a brief thought just from the board, and I had mentioned this to Dr. Bernier in a one-on-one, is figuring out better ways of making sure parents as partners. And what I mean is, obviously between, you know, I know this as a parent, between COVID and the hurricane, obviously people have been shut out of the schools for a while. Now that, you know, people are allowed back in, I want to see what we can do to further help our community get back in the schools and understand how important it is for the parents to be involved with that. So, as I said, you know, some schools are doing an excellent job, and some parents from other ones, I don't know, you know, what the reason is, but it doesn't feel like they're saying that connect. So I don't know what my fellow board members think about that, if there's something we as a board can try to help promote, or, you know, obviously from the administrative side, just making sure that we're good partners with our parents. Ms. Langford Fleming?
I totally agree. As you know, I brought this up earlier, and I think that when we talk about what our mission is of being a world-class system, that also means outside of the four walls of the classroom and bringing in families and making sure they feel welcome in all of our schools. I will say there are schools working harder at that than others. And I would love to see that more unified across the district in every zone. I know some schools have great programs, like, I'm just throwing it out there, is the Watchdog program. That's an amazing program that brings in dads. They do things as small as opening car doors in the morning at parent pickup, to having lunch in the cafeteria, or helping do something throughout the day. So programs like that, I know that they just aren't spread throughout the county as much as in some of the schools with really strong PTAs and PTO groups. So I was out at one of our amazing schools, Tice Elementary, which has a very hard time with PTA, and I do think that's because of the second language, learners. It's just a different type of population. But how can we as a district start coming up with these ideas at schools like that, where I am certain that those families would love to be involved, they don't know how. So I would charge the superintendent to talk with staff and maybe brainstorm on some ways that we can partner with parents in all of our schools. So thank you for bringing that up.
Mr. Persons?
Question for the superintendent. Is all the organizations like PTA, PTO, even 4-H out at one of my schools, are they sort of formed by the parents, or is the principal tasked with forming these groups, or does he just sort of let it happen? I'm just not sure.
It's a good question. PTAs and PTOs form in very particular ways. PTA very different from a PTO. In the case of a new building, a principal would bring together individuals willing to work and develop a PTA, but then ultimately the Florida PTA then has to, I don't want to say certify, I know that's the wrong word, but they have to bring that PTA into being through a meeting with the Florida PTAs. They have to be adopted into the PTA family. PTOs are often structured the same way, with a principal and leading with parents together and forming a PTO. They lack that necessary step of them having to be certified by the PTA because they are a PTO. They're a parent-teacher organization versus aligning themselves to the larger association. The other place that I think we have to work, if we think about the previous board member's comment, is if the strategic plan is going to live, and I'm looking at some of my staff, I'm sure they're taking the note, school improvement plans have to be devised in manner and means by which each school has a strategy for parental involvement. So we'll look into both of those.
Thank you.
Ms. Langford Fleming?
And just to add, you know, as I'm out in the community, there are several communities that would be willing, or excuse me, there are several businesses that would be willing to partner with these schools, such as the one I mentioned before, to help develop some sort of, they may not be the parents of the students, but to help develop relationships that people in our community do care about you. Even if your parents maybe are working 2 or 3 jobs, you also have these business partners that can come in and help with, you know, some of our schools do some amazing Teacher Appreciation Week things, and but then there are other schools that, you know, they don't get so much. So I think it's important that we as a district make sure that the local businesses here in town are made aware of these needs, because like I always say, a lot of times people want to help, they just don't know where to start. So those are just some other thoughts.
Thank you, Ms. Langford Fleming. Anyone else on that? One of the things for me also is, as well, we talked about it and talked about the district, but also us as board members, as being community leaders and stuff, you know, some of the things that maybe we can think about what we can do to make sure, you know, parents and community members feel welcome back in there and try to get out it's what Dr. Bernier talks about. Part of it is making sure we're showing all the good things that are happening in this district. So, because, you know, often, unfortunately, the news and other outlets, you hear about some of the more negative things. And it's part of what I see is what our goal is as board, making sure that we get out there all these positive, great things that are happening in this district. So that's kind of part of me bringing this up as well. So. But thank you for entertaining me on this. So besides that, that's all I have for my comment. Mr. Superintendent?
Only because I know people listen at different times, I wanted to be sure that all of our parents and the board, I'll make this comment again tonight, are Connect with Lee, the free online tutoring. That's the process that allows students to join online for homework help and classwork support on Microsoft Teams with a live educational expert manned by our own teachers. We've already had a number of teachers who are paid for this through ESSER dollars. Another presentation that we need to bring forward to all of you. Our workshops are going to be greater in depth. But that kicks off on August 28th. The hours for elementary are 3:30 to 7:30, middle school 4:30 to 7:30, and high school from 3:30 to 7:30. So by the time students get home, if they have additional questions for their homework at the elementary, middle, and high school, they will have a Connect with Lee line that will be available to parents. They can look for that on Connect with Lee on their students' launch pad, but it'll also be out on our website as well. I want you to know that resource is occurring. Just so it's said into the ether a couple of times, August 23rd, tomorrow, is the 10-day recalculation for schools. This is where we begin to look at FTE enrollment, the size of our school buildings, and our budget department will start to work with our principals to make the necessary either increases to staffing or decreases to staffing, and there is a potential for teacher moves in the next couple of weeks. Lastly, I also wanted you to know that the direction of the board, since we have 2 big windows where people graduate with a master's in educational leadership. In my first arrive, we asked for 2 pool openings for those people to apply. The pool will be opening, I believe it's August 26th. Apologize, I just missed the date. I will get that date absolutely correct, but the pool is opening for those individuals with a master's degree who would like to be considered to become an assistant principal, and then we have the second opening after the January graduations in February. So our pool is opening twice a year now, as you requested.
Thank you, Dr. Bernier. I forgot to welcome you before up here, but welcome, Mr. Huffman. Do you have any comments or concerns or questions?
No comments at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. We'll have our action meeting tonight at 6 o'clock. Seeing no other business to come before this board, this meeting is adjourned at 2 p.m. Thank you, everyone.